we're about halfway through the Silph Tower, and you know what this means? This means we're going to be at this for a little while longer, so be patient. Something interesting is going to happen soon. So anyway, I was playing through the Dialga and Palkia missions on Ranger 2 the other day. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt that train of thought right there, just to remind you that for those of you who own Ranger 2, the Dialga and Palkia missions are available right now, so if you want to download them, I suggest you do it right now, because there's no date as for when the event will end, so you better be safe and download them right now. Although there is no reward to these missions, they're still worth playing just for the fun factor. Anyway, and also, the Manaphy, Riolu, and Darkrai missions are up until January 30. So you got 3 weeks left to download them, and after that you can play them anytime you want. But those 3 missions give you prizes, so if you want to download them, you better do this quick too, because you only have 3 weeks left. And of course, if you don't own Ranger 2, well, and you're hesitating whether to buy it or not, well, I suggest you take your decision before January 30, so you can at least collect the goodies that the game has to give you. And speaking of which, if we're ever given a second chance to obtain Mewtwo and Celebi in the opposite versions of Mystery Dungeon 2, then don't worry, I'll stay on top of the news, so I'll tell you if there is a second opportunity that ever comes up. Somehow I doubt it, but they're doing this for the item that allows to pick up the new Rotom forms in Platinum, so it might happen. So yeah, I'm gonna tell you if it ever comes up. But back to my original subject, I was playing through the Dialga mission on Ranger 2, and at one point Wendy talks about a Dialga. Now, I'm not sure I understand it well, but if she says a Dialga, does that mean that there are multiple Dialgas roaming around? Personally, I think that doesn't make sense, because I expect those deity Pokemon of sorts to be one of a kind, like for example, the version mascots of the 3rd and 4th generations, as well as Arceus. Those 7, I naturally expect them to be only one of them. So, is there a possibility that there are multiple of them? Imagine all the clusterfuck that would be provoked by having multiple deities able to control time. That would be quite something. And there are other legendaries. I'm thinking there's only one of them, but I'm not sure. I'm thinking of things like Lugia, Hoo, and Mewtwo as well. Is there only one Mewtwo? After all, it was created by scientists, and I doubt they replicated the experiment after what happened the first time. And others I'm not too sure about are, for example, the Pixies, because it said Arceus created the Pixies, as well as Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, so I would think those 3 Pixies are unique if Arceus indeed created them. But then again, they serve radically different purposes depending on which game you're playing. For example, in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, well, they're... Actually, I don't really know what they do. It's never really well explained what they do. In Mystery Dungeon 2, it's a lot clearer, though. They protect the time gears, but I would doubt that this trio in Mystery Dungeon 2 is the same as the trio in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. So, are there multiple copies of each of the Pixies? Hey, is that blue over there? Yeah, I think it is. Well, I'm sorry, boy, but you're gonna have to wait a little while longer. So, yeah, I was talking about how the Pixies were created by Arceus and all, so normally there should be only one copy of each. And then there's the whole Mystery Dungeon 2 thing, as I said, and all I gotta say is, that doesn't make much sense. Same thing for Darkrai. I have a lot of trouble believing that the Darkrai in the movie was the same as the Darkrai in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, the same as Darkrai in Ranger 2, Darkrai in Mystery Dungeon 2, so that's one I can accept that there are multiple copies of, actually. Shaymin's an easy one, though. At one point in the movie, if I remember correctly, they show several Shaymins at once, so that answers that question. Shaymin is far from unique. Another easy one would be Phione, since in Mystery Dungeon 2, you see several of them at once when they're harassed by a Gyarados, but there's one problem. Is Phione really a legendary? There's the for and there's the against, like every good debate. First, it can breed and create more of itself that way. That is, in most cases, instant disqualification. Every other non-legendary can create more copies of itself through breeding, to the notable exception of Ditto. But it's a piece of shit in combat, so Ditto doesn't count. But for all the rest, they can all create more of themselves through breeding. And, in fact, Manaphy's the only one who can breed but cannot create more of itself through breeding, so... But then again, I don't think anyone's gonna argue that Manaphy is not a legendary, so yeah, the criteria is really creating more of yourself through breeding. The only difference between Phione and the others is that Phione cannot be found normally in the wild or by evolving a given Pokemon in the wild. So yeah, that is the biggest argument you'll see for Phione not being Uber. There's also the fact that it's got a base stat total of 480, whereas every single legendary has 580 or above. However, Phione is deep within legendary numerology. Its number is 489, whereas legendary numerology begins with Uxie at 480 in the 4th generation. Crap! I kept out Venusaur against a Golbat? Well, I'm gonna see what it can do. As I expected, it can't kill it and confuse Regis. Now I'm gonna switch out to prevent even more crazy shenanigans. But back to the whole legendary numerology argument. The counter to this argument, Dragonite, Tyranitar, and their pre-evolutions are also inside legendary numerology, and no one thinks of them as legendaries, though the club they form with Salamence, Garchomp, and Metagross, well, everyone's got their own name for that select club. Some call them pseudo-legendaries. Well, call them what you like, but they're most definitely not legendaries. So yeah, I want to hear your opinion. What is your opinion on this? Is Phione a legendary or is it not? Leave me a message because I think it's an interesting debate to have. No flames, please, however. Speaking of flames, here's a topic that is certainly going to be causing a lot of them, and that would be Smogon's new underused test. As you may or may not know, they're trying out a metagame where every single Pokemon that's not overused is in, and the purpose is to determine what would break an eventual underused metagame and what would not. Now, if you've read my winners and losers column on Libeldra, then you already know why we've come to this. But if you haven't, then let me bring you up to speed. Well, a few months before Platinum came out, the underused metagame was dominated by Pokemon that had no business being there to begin with, such as Clefable, Claydol, and Swellow. But in order to bring balance to the metagame, they didn't do the sensible thing and bring those fellows up. They brought Steelix down, and Steelix soon started dominating, so they brought even more stuff down, until eventually even Aerodactyl, which was just about to make its big break into the overused tier, well, now it was underused for only a month or two though, because it became overused by default. Okay, I'm gonna check out that floor for a bit, and then I'll stop, but I'll make sure to come back on the subject in the next video, which, incidentally, will be the 50th part to this juggernaut. Be there or be sorry!